Hello, good evening and welcome to this evening's sixth form parent information evening. My name is Mr. Orr. Hopefully you've heard my voice before in some of the other talks that we've done. Tonight's parent information evening is hopefully going to last about 45 to 50 minutes. I'm recording this in one take so that it's a bit similar to the physical parent information evenings that we would usually do pre-COVID times. I have done this last year, and I've done other parent information evening talks as well. So hopefully this is becoming more commonplace amongst yourselves, and hopefully it's informative as well for you and your child in this transition between Year 12 and Year 13. This talk will be available on demand afterwards, so you can watch it throughout the summer if you wish. Or if you're not able to make it on the date which is on this particular screen. Obviously this is recorded the day after the men's Euros finals, so hopefully this is a bit of a welcome change from some of the coverage that's on TV and radio today. But obviously if you're a set of Italian parents, which I know we've got one student who's got Italian parents, obviously congratulations as well. You must be on an absolute high. Right, in terms of this outline of the talk, there's 4 different components to it. So firstly, I'm going to talk about the September mock exams, which the students are already aware of, to make sure that you're fully aware of the picture and what the students need to do prior to September. Secondly, we'll talk about applications post-18 and applications in general and the process by which students can apply to universities and apprenticeship schemes. We'll talk about predicted grades and how they're calculated, what approach is taken at OSH. Different schools have capacity to run it slightly differently, so making sure that you're fully aware of that process. And then expectations and standards. And the reason why we're doing this talk today on the evening is this should hopefully complement the release of the AIP3 information. Now that's an assessment information point, and that really should give you an accurate picture of your child's progress in the Lent and summer term, really since their return to physical school following the last lockdown. In addition to this video, there's also some information that's available. Usually what I've previously done is I've sent out an email which has all of the attachments. But instead this time, if you go to the school website, to the hyperlink which is at the bottom of the screen, and I'll put it in the description for the video as well, you'll find 3 different booklets. So one is a booklet specifically designed for applications information, one is to do with what to do outside of lessons, and one is to do with mock exams and predicted grades. I did send out this information when it was the Year 12 Parents Evening last month, but hopefully this information perhaps can be given a bit more context in this particular talk. In addition to that, there is also some further information available on that hyperlink, so you'll find that there's some subject-specific guidance and some reading that students can do as well. What I do have to say, and I have unfortunately have to say this in all the talks that I've been doing over the past 18 months really, is that the current situation is clearly evolving each week. So as I'm recording this particular talk, which is at 1 o'clock on the 12th of July, I know full well that by the end of the day there's going to be an announcement from the Prime Minister, and that might give us a further indication about what things might look like next week. And clearly I would be foolish to say that I know exactly what's going to happen next year in September or from September and for the A-levels next year. So there is a caveat to tonight's talk that all of these points that I'm saying, there has to have a warning sign next to them, that there potentially could be amended if the guidance dictates that we need to do so. So please do bear that in mind. I know that you'll be aware of that already. So, since students have physically returned to school following the last lockdown, we've found that we haven't had as much COVID-related disruption as previously, but obviously we've had students who've had to self-isolate either through school contacts or through community transmission. This obviously has taken a toll on the students, and they have had a very disrupted Year 12 experience, as has the entire nation's cohort of Year 12. And so what I would expect is that there's an announcement perhaps made in the Michaelmas term about what A-levels and BTECs will look like next year. We did have an announcement last year saying that all exams would take place as usual, and obviously that information had to then be changed. So the students have done a fantastic job since they've come back. We've been so impressed with their attitude and their endeavour. A lot of students have obviously done some self-reflection. They've changed maybe some approaches on potentially career routes, and that's completely understandable as well. This is a year like no other, and no other cohort has had this experience that this current Year 12 cohort have had. So they've done fantastically well under the circumstances. But what I'd also like to pass on is what information the students have had access to and what support they've had available specifically within the sixth form community. So firstly, Miss Hunt has been running tutor time sessions for the past 5 weeks. Now these sessions have been divided amongst different groups, so students that perhaps have stated that they want to go down certain career pathways and trajectories, and what Miss Hunt has been doing is been meeting with them every morning for a week, and she's been giving them advice on particularly personal statements. So at this particular stage, all students in the sixth form, whether they're wanting definitely to go to university or not, should have started their first draft of their personal statement, and the vast majority have completed their first draft. Now we're asking students to do this via the online careers platform Unifrog. It costs a lot of money, and people don't have necessarily access individually, and instead what happens is that students have an account that is combined with the school, and students can essentially input information about their personal statements. They can make changes, and it saves automatically. Teachers can see this from their computer screens, any kind of changes that are made, and we can add comments as well. The cohort have been fantastic at getting involved in that over the past 5 weeks. Some really good conversations with Miss Hunt, and that's something that the students have really engaged with. That's quite rare for students at this particular point to be looking at their post-18 personal statements so early, and the students have been a real credit to themselves. The students have also had access to Swinford Court. We have moved away from the old sixth form centre, what was known as Harris, and what used to be called the Base Lounge, which was the Year 13 area. Instead, Swinford Court is going to be the base of the sixth form students' next academic year full time. We're going to have some other subjects that are going to be based there. So myself for history, we have psychology with Mrs. Epton and Dr. McGee, we have our business department, we have our computing department, economics and maths. So there'll be far more teachers over there at Swinford Court. And what we'll also do is we'll have further renovations over the summer holidays, so that there is almost a completely new setup for students in the sixth form. On the ground floor level, students have access to a silent study area, which is a large space, lots of brand new desks and tables that students can go and use in their independent study times and at break and lunch. There's also a refectory area that students can work in, but they can talk in that particular area as well. There'll be brand new ICT facilities as well for September. In addition to the above, all of Year 12 have had the opportunity to meet with Mrs. Appley. Now Mrs. Appley will be the new head of Year 13 for these students. She's been at the school and particularly working with the sixth form for a long time, and she has great experience particularly with applications. So what she's been doing is she's been meeting with these students not just in workshops like Miss Hunt has, going through those key pieces of information on applications and personal statements. She's been having one-to-one meetings. This has been taking a long time because she's having quite lengthy discussions, about 15-20 minutes per student, and she's talking about the transition to Year 13. About 80% of Year 12 have taken up that opportunity, and we're hopeful that in these final 3 days the rest of the cohort are able to have these meetings as well. The kind of things that they've been talking about are expectations, so if there's any problems, particularly with attendance, punctuality or dress code, post-18 routes, personal statements, so looking at some of the original drafts that Miss Hunt has been working with them on. I've seen a few students already who are on second, third, fourth drafts as well. talking about workload, mock exams, and where to go to for support. And it's really important that the students have that relationship with Mrs. Appley in what will be their most important school year to date. So now I'd like to talk about the September mock exams. We've done different mock exam windows in the past. We've done September before, we've done June, but what we need to stress is why we're having the September mock exams when they're taking place and what expectations we have. So all students have been emailed a personal copy of their September mock exams by Mrs. Weston, who is our exams officer at OSH. The exams will take place at Swinford Court Hall, so the same place where they go to for their independent study periods. And the real purpose behind the mock examinations is for students to have that relevant experience of being tested in this format. Now, I know that other providers were doing mock exam windows in this format in June and July currently, and I can understand the rationale behind that. That's a usual time that we would have mock examinations for students in the sixth form. However, we felt within the sixth form, and having spoken to some of the students, that coming back physically to school was going to take quite a toll on them in terms particularly of their workload. And what we wanted to do was focus completely on catching up with the content and making sure that our content delivery was as best as it could possibly be. A mock exam window usually takes about 2 weeks of time away from those subject areas. So because we knew that cases had gone down nationwide, we felt as though it was important at that particular point to do lesson time and to focus in on the content delivery. Now, at this stage, currently, we are working under the assumption that A-levels and BTEC examinations will run in the format pre-COVID. So the same examinations, the same content that is going to be assessed, the same time frame as can be seen on the specifications on the exam board websites. So therefore what we've done is we've tried to create a timetable that reflects an experience that the students would have next summer. The differences in this particular approach is that we are not having study leave for students. We've decided to do this in September so that students can work in the summer holidays. It is absolutely crucial that they have a break, but they also need to make sure that they are revising, particularly in those final 2 or 3 weeks for their mock exams. When students have their mock exam window, they are expected in school at that time, so they're not expected to go home in between. They do not have study leave, and the idea is that if they don't have an examination, that they attend their lessons. Those lessons will be used predominantly for revision, and so that students can get that final bit of information to prepare them for their examinations. Now, I know this week and last week teachers of A-level and BTEC subjects have been supporting their students about what's going to come up in those September mock exams, what to revise for, what to prioritise in terms of content, and how to revise as well. So they've had those conversations. On the screen at the moment is the timetable. That's not the personalised timetable, but the overall timetable for September. So you can see that the window is between Monday the 13th of September and Thursday the 23rd of September. The reason why we've done it on these dates is that the 6th of September is when students are expected back in school, so that gives them a week of return to school life, their new timetables, speaking to their teachers and preparing for these mock examinations. We've spaced out the exams as best as we can, but really in the summer term what students might find is that they have a concentrated period of examinations, so we're trying to replicate what it's like, what it could be like next summer. The exams are generally about 2 hours in length on average, with the exception of art, which has to be a certain longer period of time, and that's why it's on the Thursday the 23rd of September. Now, as we've said already, we can't fully envisage what's going to happen in September with regard to COVID-related disruption, and so consequently what we've done is we've got a mop-up window afterwards. We did advertise this before to the Year 13s that have just gone through the school, for when they had their mock exam window, and ultimately it meant that we had to do this remotely. Now, I anticipate from what the government have been saying that we will be able to do this in school, which will be far better. It will give us a more accurate picture, and it will be a better experience for the students. But there is that possibility as well of being able to do this remotely if students are directed to self-isolate or for any particular disruption that we're not aware of at the moment. It might be useful at this point as well to make a note of the examinations that your son or daughter is going to be doing in September, and helping them with the timetables that they're going to be creating for their revision. In addition to that, it would be useful as well to pass on what kinds of key messages to say to students during the summer holidays. And we've had these individual meetings, and the students are aware of the September mock exams, and the students have been overwhelmingly positive and grateful of the fact that they're going to have this particular experience, considering that they didn't sit their GCSE exams in the same format as previous years. So it is going to be a learning curve for them, and it should be seen as that. So mock exams, how I would suggest to students is they're not obviously going to revise the exact same way, the exact same amount as they would for their final A-level and BTEC subjects, but it gives them an opportunity to really showcase how well they're doing. And there is another key piece of information that is important to them. We will be using the mock exams alongside pre-existing information to help calculate predicted grades. So it is important that the students take this seriously. What we don't want is students to not do any revision and see what they would get under those sorts of circumstances. That won't be beneficial to them in the long run. So what you can do to help out your son or daughter during this window is making sure that they are motivated, that they are organised, and that they are working for a portion of that summer holidays. It is important that they have a break, but what we have done is we've provided some resources that might be useful for them on a closed link on the school website. So the closed link is available in the description to the video below, so you can find that. And it is entitled Sixth Form Independent Study. It's the same place where there's the booklets for tonight's talk on the predicted grade information applications and what to do outside of lessons. That what to do outside of lessons booklet is designed for this, so how to revise the process of revision and what kind of tasks students should be doing. Passive activities like reading a book and not doing anything with that isn't necessarily going to be helpful in committing that knowledge to memory. Underneath those booklets on that web page are some student documents. Now, there's subject-specific information about what kind of things to do outside of lessons for those subject areas. In addition, and if there's capacity to do so, there's two good books that I would recommend from CGP. CGP are an exams publisher. You'll recognise them, they do lots of things for GCSE and A-level, and they try and condense the revision notes down in an easy to digest format. They've got two books that they released fairly recently. One's called Study Skills and Revision Planner, and one is How to Get into University. Both are excellent, and I really would recommend that you consider both. They're relatively inexpensive for the price of lots of books as well, and I swear I'm not getting commission from CGP to say this. Lots of the things that we try and put forward to students in workshops are taken from these particular resources, so please do bear them in mind. I've mentioned already about motivation and organisation, and what it might be worth doing in this particular talk is just going through some of those key headlines to make sure that when students are revising over the summer holidays, and like I say, I'm really focused in on maybe the latter part of August prior to the 13th, so really roughly from about the 13th of August, 15th of August that they're doing some revision. These are the things to bear in mind. So they are linked to motivation and organisation, clearly, but there's some key messages that students know about already, they've had in tutor time and from workshops, but that you can pass on as well. So firstly, where are the students going to be doing their revision? Making sure that they have that spot ready for them. It's important that distractions are kept to a bay. Phones aren't a good thing. I know that students will say, yes, I need to have my phones, I need to work with music. The evidence is really clear that having a phone causes a distraction that's not going to help them with their memory committal, and likewise if they're listening to music, it means that they're 16% less productive at retaining that information. Making sure that they're sitting on a comfortable chair, that they get plenty of natural light, that's important for, again, knowledge retention. That noise is kept to a minimum, so external noise, that they have supplies to make sure that they can dual code that information in effective ways. So, for example, if they're wanting to create mind maps or flashcards, that they have the relevant resources for them. Now, we have resources within school, so if there's things that are missing prior to Wednesday, make sure that they let myself, Miss Hunt, Miss Appley or Miss Sparks know, and we'll be able to help out in whatever way we can. And maintaining those standards, so the space, and I'm a bad person for this because my office is always a mess, making sure that it's a place that is students want to return to go and work. In addition to that, it's important that students are sticking to a routine, and this largely ties in with this aspect of sleep, which I'll come on to. It's important that students have a routine in August as well. You know, a time when they get up, a time when they go to bed that's usually the same during the weekdays. Structure, timetables, important even during holiday periods. That students understand what melatonin is, and again, like I say, I'll talk about that with sleep in a second. Avoiding caffeine in the afternoon, not helpful for, again, knowledge retention, but also effective sleep. And again, phone usage, limiting that during aspects of revision. You know, physical health, obviously we'd expect students to be doing some forms of exercise over the summer holidays. Again, that's really important at knowledge retention. Plenty of research to talk that suggests that those that are effectively exercising, again, will have better memory retention. It's important that students know where their goal is, and we'll talk about this in a second with applications. So having those goals set for students, maybe pinning that to a wall, keeping them motivated. Where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? Where do you see yourself in a year's time? Where do you want to go to? What are the requirements for that? Having that motivation is going to be a key factor in ensuring that students are doing the effective amount of revision. Setting extrinsic rewards as well is also going to be particularly beneficial. So coming up with ideas of, okay, if I've worked 5 hours today of revision, what's going to be my reward at the very end of it? It could be that rewards are based on things like skills, or being disciplined, or doing one specific task. Those sorts of things students can set themselves, and it can be in, I wouldn't necessarily always say monetary or financial rewards are the best. You know, it can be things like having a break, sitting down, watching TV, listening to music, playing a musical instrument, those sorts of things, going out to see friends. Task lists also can be particularly useful for basic organisation. So working out what's urgent and important at a specific point. So this is called Eisenhower's matrix of importance. If you do go to the school website under the remote learning page, there are some parent information videos on things like this, like motivation and time management and organisation, and sleep as well. So that issue of sleep that I've mentioned, if you do go to the school website, you look at the remote guidance, there is a talk which is available there. The big things about sleep, it's one of the most crucial things in helping students develop at the sixth form level, making sure that they have routines, avoiding caffeine, understanding how melatonin can be suppressed, that's the sleep hormone, and there's some information as well via the University of Surrey that I'd recommend. In addition to those videos which are available for parents on the remote learning guidance part of the school website, there's also some videos on the extended project qualification, which I'll mention at the very end of today's talk. The extended project qualification is designed around students becoming more independent as learners, and there's a few videos that are available that I again would recommend if you've got time to have a look at. There's one, for example, which is on time management, which you can find on the Old Swinford Hospital Sixth Form YouTube channel, which is where you're at now. So, in summary, my top tips are this. Setting a timetable that works around holidays, other commitments that is absolutely crucial, and students should create that themselves. There have been guides that have been passed on from Mrs. Appley that students can utilise, and it's important that students stick to that. Having parents and guardians monitor that with the students, checking up, making sure that they're up and about ready, is beneficial as well. And the example I always give to the students is that my dad was fantastic at this in year 12 and 13. He used to take me into his work, and what we would do is he would set me up in a meeting room, and I would work there for a morning. I hated him at the time. Not many other parents were doing similar sorts of things, but ultimately I got the reward, and looking back however many years later, I'm very grateful that he did that. Show my homework is something that hopefully you've got that parent login for. That's important to discuss work that's been set over the holidays, and staff will have been putting things on there for revision resources. And finally, support and engage with post-18 options. That's the big intrinsic reward that will help keep students motivated. So yes, my dad had excellent discipline for me. He made sure that I had the resources available so that I could work and revise. But the thing that I had was a really clear idea as to what I wanted to go on and do. So I had that self-motivation as well. And that's something that I'll come on to now. So with regard to post-18 applications, there isn't one route, and what students should really be emphasised again, it should be emphasised again and again, and what you can emphasise to them is that whatever route they're thinking now, their life is going to take all these different sorts of trajectories that are unexpected, and that the vast majority of people have about 7 different careers in their or 7 different employers in their lifetime. So they don't have to fully know what they want to do when they're 30, 40, 50, or what they've done when they retire at this particular point. But what's important for them to understand is what local labour market information there is, so what kind of careers and sectors are particularly going to thrive in the 2020s, and areas that they might want to consider. What kind of route might be most beneficial to their preferred way of learning, and making sure that they understand what these next steps could potentially lead to. So what kind of qualifications require certain further qualifications, if that makes sense. So what jobs, for example, require degrees or require certain NVQs. Now, on the school website, there is a careers page that's designated for all students and parents. Please take the time to have a look through that. And there is a Year 12 and 13 video. The Year 12 video is more specifically focusing on supercurricular options, and I'd recommend that as well. But the Year 13 video is on non-university routes as well, so that might be a useful watch. Even the videos for younger students, there's links there to different employers and different routes that you might want to consider. But for the purposes of this talk, we're going to look at 4 different areas. The first is going straight into employment. The second is looking at apprenticeship schemes. The third is looking at university. And the fourth is looking at gap years. Now, underemployment as well will also refer to the armed forces. These are the 4 most common routes that students take post-18. There are others that are available, and if you go to the careers page on the school website, there's 30 that are listed there. But for the benefit of this talk, I'm going to talk about these particular areas. We'll talk about the basic things to bear in mind and how you can support them through this. But what I will say is that if you're unsure about these kind of routes, like many of you have already spoken to me about already this term as parents, do get in contact. That's absolutely fine. Ask the questions. That's the right thing to do. So with regard to employment, the areas that students should potentially look at are the public services. So looking at maybe paramedic schemes, which also tie into apprenticeships, but also the armed forces, local opportunities, and word-of-mouth contacts. All of these options can be explored if students think that actually they don't want to further their education anymore and they want to go straight into employment and earn. If they've secured their A-levels and BTEC qualifications, that does also mean that later down the line, in case they change their mind, they will be able to go down other routes. The application process is obviously like all kinds of employment. So with local opportunities and word of mouth contacts, that's usually involves submissions of CVs, cover letters, and then going through to an interview stage, as you'll be fully aware of. With regard to public services, they're more regimented, which is to be expected, but there are recruitment drives, and lots of these armed forces will also have shops in the centre of town, so in Birmingham, and you can go in and you can speak to different advisors that are there. They have lots of money behind them, lots of government granted schemes, so also have a look at their websites. I've put their websites, the predominant ones for the public services there. Other places to look would be Indeed. Local newspapers are also really good, and I would also look at local labour market information for big employers in the local area. This week students will be given a booklet which has got information about the Black Country. It's from the Black Country Schools Consortium, and that will go through key employers in the local area. There aren't set deadlines for this. Sorry, I'll just take a drink. So students can find and secure jobs post their A-levels from this particular point. It's happened in the past. An example would be a few years ago, a student had a word of mouth contact for a job working in an accountancy firm, and that was secured at the end of year 12. It isn't fixed though. It might be that actually they're looking and applying for jobs throughout all of year 13, or that they're going to apply for jobs once they complete their A-level and BTEC examinations. Apprenticeships differ from employment in the sense that students, the applicants will not only have employment that they get paid for, but they will also get qualifications. Now, there are 4 different apprenticeship levels, and I would recommend looking at the OSH Careers website, the Year 13 video, which goes through these in a bit more detail. But the 4 options are intermediary, advanced, higher, and degree. Intermediary is equivalent to GCSE level, advanced is equivalent to A level, so those are the levels that students could go straight into at this point without even securing their A levels or BTECs. Higher and degree are the equivalent of going beyond A levels, so students will need to have A levels before they can access these apprenticeships. There is no universal system for apprenticeships. There is not an equivalent, one website where you can find all of these different things. However, the places to look are things like the National Apprenticeship Service, the government website, Amazing Apprenticeships. UCAS does have good information on apprenticeship schemes, and they're starting to actually put a lot of opportunities there. So students can log into their UCAS hub and they can find out information on apprenticeships there. But we would specifically recommend the Unifrog apprenticeships tool. Now, there's information on that in one of the booklets, the applications booklet that you have access to from this talk. Colleges, if it's done via something like Hales-Owen College or Dudley College or Howe College, that's Heart of Worcestershire College, they usually use a similar process in which students would apply to a sixth form. And there are higher apprenticeships that are available through these different colleges. Apprenticeships offered by employers tend to be very competitive and rigorous because students are getting paid and qualifications at the end of this. So there is this terrible and outdated idea that apprenticeships are the easy option. It's probably the exact opposite. Accessing higher and degree apprenticeships is very competitive, and consequently students who want to go down this route should be aware that they should start looking now. They should start looking at summer schemes, looking at opportunities, particularly if they're looking at accountancy and finance at the Big Four, so Deloitte, KPMG, Ernst & Young, and one other that escapes me, and some of those outside the Big Four as well. The dates for them start very, very soon. So if they are looking at higher or degree apprenticeships, look now. The other route that students might want to look at is universities. This is the most common one that we have in the school, so we're looking at over 80% of students will go to university as their intended destination following sixth form study. There are plenty of different options, and sometimes students can find it a little bit overwhelming at the variety of different courses that are available to them. But there are some things to make these things a little bit more simplistic. So firstly, UCAS, all students have logged into that already. UCAS has got all information about courses, and it is the place where they do their applications from. So rather than having to go to lots of different websites, that's the one place where everything is centralized. Going to university in different countries is not done via UCAS, and we have a very small number each year that want to go to maybe certain countries. We can assist them in that process. We'd also recommend students use the Unifrog universities and subject tools. That's very useful at understanding what kind of courses are out there, so students can rank and filter and decide what are potentially the best courses to go to based on their profiles. And there's also another website that does something very similar called whatuni.com. The deadlines for application are 15th of October for early applicants, and I'll come on to that in a second, and the 26th of January for all remaining applicants. It used to be the 15th of January, but it's now the 26th for next year. We don't want students to wait until January to put their UCAS applications in. We ideally want them to have this done by November. That will help them massively when it comes to working out their motivations, having that goal at the very end, and making sure that they're getting offers in rather than having to worry about this at the same time as another mock exam window which will take place in December, January. The different options that are available are single honours courses, so this is where students do one particular subject, so it might be history or English or accountancy. Joint honours are where students do two or more courses together, so it might be business with Spanish or business and Chinese studies. Students might decide whether or not to do a bachelor degree, which is 3 years in England, or a master's degree, which is 4 years in England. They might decide to do sandwich courses where they have a year either in employment, in a placement year, or potentially taking a year abroad and studying abroad for a year. Some students might wish to have a foundation year course. It might be that their grades aren't suitable for them to start an undergraduate bachelor's or master's degree at that particular point, and they might need to do an extra year before they start that. Foundation years are becoming increasingly common, and they essentially are a way in which students can get prepared for their university degrees. Or it might be a case that students wish to study abroad for either 1 or more years of study. The final common route that students potentially go down, and I'd say this is about 5 to 10% of our students, is looking at gap years. So gap years can be set by the students themselves. It might be local, it might be national, it might be international. It's difficult at this particular stage to talk about gap years with COVID-related disruption. And students that are taking gap years currently, who would now be in year 14 equivalent, have tended to stay locally. You can sort out employment for a year. It might be that that's the route that students want to do before they then think about universities or apprenticeship or higher or degree apprenticeships. It might be that they set their own travel programs and try and travel the world. It might be that it's done via an organisation. Again, there's a really good guide on Unifrog, which is under the know-how section on gap years. There's good websites like Go Abroad, and UCAS as well has some good information about gap years. There's no set process for this, and there's no set deadlines. It's really important that if students want to take a gap year, that they have a plan. So I've mentioned some websites already, but these are the two that students know about at this particular point and that you should know about as well. So the first is UCAS and the second is Unifrog. UCAS is where students can find out a lot of information about their routes post-18, and it is the place where they make their applications for universities if that's their route. Unifrog is an information gatherer, so that's where students can get all information about universities, apprenticeships, gap years, they can find personal statements, and it's where they can draft and write their personal statements. It isn't, however, the place where they submit their applications. And students are aware of both of these, and they have access to both, and they've utilised both. These are the best two websites to use, and it's important that you're familiar with them as well. We've said to students, all students, that they should have logged into UCAS, which they've done. We've also told them that they need to do personal statements, even if they're not going to university. Firstly, in case they change their mind, and secondly, a personal statement is very similar to a cover letter application or things that you might want to put on an application form, so it's worth their time doing that. If they do that route, therefore, UCAS is then a preparatory exercise. So it is important that they do both, and we have told all students, and please reiterate this, that their personal statement draft should be done on Unifrog, and that they should be logged in, having completed all the basic information on UCAS. The vast overwhelming majority have already done that. So with applications, like I say, the vast majority of students will be going to university as their intended route. We're talking roughly about 80% of students. So consequently, what do students need to be aware of, and what do you need to be aware of? Well, firstly, there's two different types of university applications. The first is early applications. Now, these are for students that are wanting to go to Oxford, Cambridge, medicine, dentistry, or veterinary medicine or science. Those students are going to go for the most competitive courses with the very best entry requirements. So what we've done is we've sent out a message to them. We've met with a large group already in different workshops, and we've asked them to specifically say that they wish to be an early applicant. They've already started their personal statements, and they're going to continue doing that over the summer holidays. They have already got quite a bit of information from Mrs. Appley and Miss Hunt about that. I am the final port of call for final checks, and I'll be doing that in September with them. They've got their mock exams in September, which will be used alongside previous information to formulate predicted grades. And they should submit their UCAS applications by the 5th of October. Now, the deadline externally is the 15th of October, but we require 10 days to make sure that their applications are perfect, that there's no mistakes, there's no problems with personal statements, there's no problems with courses that they've applied to that are unrealistic. So it's important that they meet the 5th of October deadline. That applies for only those particular courses. Other students may wish to apply at a similar time, but they have much longer really to look at this. So standard applications are for any course that isn't listed in the early applicant section. They're working on their personal statements as well. They will have their mock exams in September, but they have slightly longer to perfect their personal statements and submit their UCAS forms. We are saying to students that they need to complete this by the end of November. They do not want to have this over Christmas or during a mock exam window. And that mock exam window is either going to take place in December or in January. So they want to get this done beforehand. So with these applications to university or for higher or degree apprenticeships, they will usually stipulate that there are conditions that students need to meet, and these conditions are largely GCSE and A-level based. So GCSEs are things that they've already got, and it might be that they automatically have to discount certain routes because of their GCSE profile. With regard to their A-levels, students will be given and allocated predicted grades by myself as the head of sixth form. Now, I create these predicted grades based on teacher recommendations. So these aren't the target grades that students are set based on their GCSE profile, and they're not things that teachers are held accountable against based on school measures. It's something that I'm held accountable on as a head of sixth form, and it's important that these are realistic based on prior attainment and potential attainment. Now, what we've tried to do because of COVID-related disruption is give students as much time as possible to get the best possible chance of a strong predicted grade. We didn't want to rush into giving predicted grade judgments at this particular point. Students have done assessments already. They have their AIP3 information, which you should have today, and that will be largely close to what we would expect for their predicted grades, unless they do particularly well in their September mock exams. We also want to ensure that we give chance for students to improve their predicted grades if they're standard applications by having further examinations. But these predicted grades will be set for students at the start of October. They will find them out in the very first week of October. Those early applicants ideally will have that information prior, so that when we have that 10-day window before the 15th of October, they have essentially know that they've got the right predicted grades to apply for these courses. Predicted grades are ultimately going to change for the next academic year. For this academic year, it is really important that students and parents know that these are essentially something that only the head of sixth form is held accountable against. There is no point setting unrealistic, unattainable grades for students. Ultimately, it will be to their detriment, because they might necessarily get the course, get a conditional offer for a particular course, but if they don't make the grades, then they'll be rejected ultimately. So we have a duty of care to our students in that sense. I've got to say, the past year that I've done this with parents and students, and I've reiterated these points, I have very, very few conversations where parents and students are querying the grades that have been set for them. They understand this particular process and the rationale behind it. So, in order to help students at this point, what I would suggest that you do as parents is look at that AIP3 information that's come out today, look at past performance, particularly GCSE profiles, and I would start thinking about university routes that are available. Now, they can look for different course requirements on UCAS and on Unifrog, but I'd also look at opendays.com. Opendays.com will give you a list of all of the events that are available over the summer at different universities locally and nationwide. I would have a bit of an idea about what safe options there are. So safe options would be where students are working at the moment. I'd then look at maybe grade profiles, maybe 1 or 2 grades higher than the grade profile at the moment, as maybe some realistic options to look at. And I would also consider some aspirational ones as well. So they might be a few grades higher. That's absolutely fine. But what we will do when we help submit these UCAS applications, we'll make sure that the choices that students have selected are realistic, they are attainable, and that students aren't going to be rejected out of hand by universities. As I've said already, we will students will declare their interest at being early applicants, and we will make sure that students understand that process of the academic rigour and required practical grades for the very competitive courses that are early applications, so your medicine, your Oxford, Cambridge, veterinary and dentistry. Final thing to say, and this is a final caveat to this particular part, is that we cannot be sure that examinations will be taking place in the expected format in summer 2021. We can't be sure of that. We can't be sure of what COVID-related rules there are in the next academic year. Therefore, the students must focus on what they can control. They can control how much work they put in. They can control the kind of learning styles and approaches they're taking. They can focus in on what routes they want to go for post-18 studies, and those are the things that they should concentrate on, what they can control, not the things that they can't control. The final part of today's talk are other matters that were arising, some information about expectations and standards. Firstly, I'd like to congratulate all those students that applied to become a prefect next academic year. Like I said, we had over 60 applications and we whittled it down to 19. Congratulations to the board. They've already helped out significantly, along with students who aren't prefects as well, in helping out with tours for prospective students. They've given some information about marketing. We're meeting with them tomorrow as well to ask their thoughts and views towards a change coming forward in the school. Next academic year, they'll be helping out with rotas, making sure that students in year 12 and 13 are working independently, effectively, they're not distracting others. So congratulations to that prefect board. Congratulations as well to those that have been helping out with societies and clubs, so debating societies, is really effectively transitioned from the leadership of Zaina Yunus and Noah Mosley. It's a student-led society. Well done to those that helped out in Model UN. That's a huge thing to put on your personal statement, to say that you were a part of that. Please make sure that you do so. I would also like to thank and congratulate Issa Rashid and Ivan Abbott, who have been selected as our presidents of MedSoc. Lots of students are doing their own societies. Well done to those that are taking part in Wednesday games still and fixtures and helping out with the sports. Well done to those that took part in the virtual the virtual musical concert that took place in the summer, some of those sixth formers. There are plenty of things that you can still be getting involved in Year 13, and hopefully as restrictions allow for it, it will make that process of joining these clubs and societies even easier. Swinford Court, as I've mentioned already, is a new building that the students can access within the sixth form. There is a silent study area. The students have understood that now, that this is an area where they have to remain silent if they are working. There will be a prefect rota next academic year where students will essentially enforce that as well. The sixth form team is going to be based down there from September, so it hopefully should be a really good opportunity for students to work in a completely new building, new equipment, and hopefully that new and professional environment will reflect in the attainment scores that students achieve. I do want to reiterate some basic expectations to you so that you can pass this on. I know we've had quite a lot of conversations on a one-to-one basis with certain parents on some issues relating to dress code and behaviour. Please do look at the school website. There's a new behaviour policy that's just been updated with some key messages. And I just wanted to go through some of these key headlines. So it's black or brown shoes. I understand if there's issues regarding maybe trainers that are shoes that are broken at a certain point. Really important that we maintain those standards. Long hair should be tied back so that it's not covering the face. That's for boys and girls. Suits should be a plain colour. That's black, grey or blue. They shouldn't be checkered. I'm not sure if I've spelt the checkered right there. It might be more like a banknote checkered. And finally, skirts should be knee length. All the information plus a bit more is available on that behaviour policy. We'll continue working with you and the students on that. I know that students want that individualistic style, but it's important that we maintain basic standards. If these aren't met, if there are persistent problems, obviously we will go down the sanction route, which again you can see on that behaviour policy. I'd also like to go through these basic expectations on attendance, punctuality. Punctuality is referenced in UCAS applications and on apprenticeship forms and employment, and I'm usually the person that people will put down as a reference. I will not lie on those forms. I will make sure that I'm accurate, and we do have it recorded via SIMS about punctuality and attendance. PM registration is at 12:50. This is at the very start of lunch, so that if students do not have any lessons in the afternoon, they have the privilege of being able to leave site. However, that can be revoked and has been revoked for certain students if attendance and standards are not met. And it's important that students still attend their PM reg slot. It's 2 minutes just going to see their tutor to get their PM registration mark. That is a compulsory requirement. Wednesday PM games has been something quite different for Year 12 students compared to previous years. We've made it optional since the Lent term. The reason being is because of COVID related disruption and because of bubbles, we tried to minimise the risk of large groups together. Based on what the government have said about easing of restrictions, and hopefully with more vaccinations underway and less cases, hopefully by September, we will be making Wednesday PM games mandatory again. And we think this is a really worthwhile step. There's so much research, again from Sport England, about the effect that consistent and regular exercise has on mental health. And we also think it's important that students have chance to see each other and their peer groups in different lights. So Wednesday PM games will be mandatory next term, because it has been obviously optional this term. Regarding supercurricular, a few people have asked me about the EPQ and whether or not they can start it now. That's absolutely fine. You can go on to this particular channel and watch the EPQ videos to get a bit of a grounding, but I would recommend messaging Dr. McGee, whose email address is on the screen. She is the Assistant Principal Examiner for AQA EPQ. She was one of the co-writers of the Principal textbook, which you can see on the screen. She is the expert on the EPQ, so please do utilise her and ask her questions if you are unsure. AS Thinking Skills hasn't necessarily run as I had envisaged and hoped this academic year. Obviously other things have taken priority. The aim is to restart in September, but it is timetable dependent. What I'll try and do as well is make things available online, and it could be that we have a hybrid approach to that. Uptake was small for AS Thinking Skills. It was about 4 students. And it might be that what students wish to do in Year 13, if they want to join, is use it for the skills to help out with their other A-level routes. Massive open online courses, or MOOCs, are available on demand. Students can search for them on Unifrog, and they are fantastic for personal statements. They're a really good thing to be doing over the summer holidays. Students can set their own deadline for them, they can work at their own pace, they can explore different ways that maybe they're for each of their subject areas, so I would recommend looking at that as well. There is going to be some information about facilities fee as well, which I haven't mentioned on these slides and I didn't write down. Facilities fee is likely to not be there next academic year, and instead students will be able to buy in to certain facilities that they wish. The facilities which they'll be one for leavers. There will be an optional third-party locker fee, so that'll be separate, and there'll be the option to have school dinners as well. Thank you very much for listening to this. I've stuck mainly to the timetable, a little bit over than what I was expecting. The next date for yourselves to save in the calendar is Friday the 8th of October at 4 p.m. That's a Year 13 Parents' Evening. I'm hoping that will be in person, and I'll be able to meet with you all and talk about certain matters like UCAS, for example. It's right at that key window of applications, and students will be able to get some feedback on their mock exams from their teachers as well. So thank you very much. If you've got any questions, my email address is robertor@oshsch.com. Please feel free to get in touch. Have a lovely summer holiday when it comes to you, and hopefully I will see you in person on the 8th of October.